Hello everyone and welcome to the Bearded Geeks, the weekly grab bag of topics covering movies, comics, video games and TV. My name is Jages, I'm the Beard Master, and today we're throwing the bloody regular show format out the window. We're taking it and it's going out the bloody window. Doing something completely different today. I've watched a lot of Ash vs. Evil Dead in the last week. I've gotten caught up. I haven't watched Season 2 yet. Season 3 has just started. So I binge-watched Season 2 and I started Season 3. I did this all in like less than 24 hours. So I watched like 12 episodes. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, God, I love this show. God, I love this franchise. I'd really love to just sit down and talk about Evil Dead 2. So I didn't have anything going for this week's episode. So I thought, hey, why not do an Evil Dead 2 episode? But then I thought, why don't we mix it up a bit? Because we've talked about doing audio commentaries before, so I thought, bugger it. Instead of just sitting there and talking about the episode, we might watch the movie and talk about it as we go. So this should be interesting. So what I think I'll do is, I've got everything ready to go. I'm sitting here and ready to go. What I might do is, I might hit play. I'll count you guys in. I might count out like the first 10 seconds of the movie when I hit play, when I hit start. So if you guys want, you can sync up the movie and listen to this commentary at the same time. Might make it more fun that way. So here we go. Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Let's have some fun right here on the Bearded Geeks. So we're about to count in 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 seconds in. I think that should do it for you guys. So, yeah, sync it up and you can watch and listen to this at the same time. We'll have a good time together. So now here's this bitchin' intro. I've always loved this intro and the voiceover. Legend has it was written by the Dark Ones. Necronomicon Ex Mortis. Look at this stop motion on this book. This looks fantastic. And it opens its mouth into this composite shot, which looks fantastic, by the way. These skulls and that, like, flying at you, skeletons and skulls on legs and bone dogs and stuff. It looks fantastic. It's, for the budget on this movie, which is quite low, actually, $3.6 million. This looks fantastic. And this is probably one of my favorite shots. The book where it's being lettered across the blood sea, you know, when the seas ran red with blood in the background. Boom. I just realized I gotta, like, actually talk through this. I just get invested in the movie. So, we'll start off. A lot of people actually wonder about this movie. Do they say, you know, is this actually a straight-up sequel? Is it a remake? What is it? Because of this intro, which is just starting right now with Ash and Linda on the way to the cabin, like, completely ignoring the first film. The reason behind that is because Sam Raimi and Rob Tappert and all the guys in that, they didn't actually own the rights to the first film. So they couldn't get access to any of that footage. They weren't allowed to use any of it. So they decided, what are we going to do? We'll just do a straight up remake of the film, but we'll go back and we'll refilm some of those scenes just to, like, fill in the blanks. So anyone who's, like, made their way to the franchise for the first time, they'll know what's going on, but we'll just reduce it to Ash and Linda, just down to the basics. Great score here. Great piece of score. The Love theme by Joseph LaDuca, I believe his name is, if I pronounce his last name correctly. I love how it builds. The dun 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 dun. And it comes in real handy. And Bruce's acting here is fantastic. I'm a man and you're a woman. I actually heard a story, Bruce Campbell talk about this particular piece of jewelry of Linda's and that. He hated it. Like, it was this little, like, piece of jewelry, like a magnifying glass on the bottom of it. And he absolutely hated it. He thought it was tacky and terrible. But Sam, when they went to the jewelry shop, he's like, I love it. It's amazing. It's going to be in the film. We're going to use it. It's going to be this big linchpin in the story. It's not actually in this film now, but apparently the story was that later in the film, there was going to be, when it comes to dawn, like, Ash is in the cabin and he's doing his last-ditch effort to fight the evil, and there would be some sun, like, shining through, like, the boards and stuff, and he would use the piece of jewelry, the magnifying glass, to magnify the light onto the evil and kill it, explode it, or something like that. Apparently, that's what the story was anyway, come from Bruce Campbell. And here's the scene where he discovers the book and the tape recorder. Now, like I said, I binge watched Ash vs. Evil Dead in the last few days, and there's this great scene where Ash returns to the cabin at the end of the season, and he's trying to find the book, in the plot of that story. He's trying to find the book. So he gets in the cabin and he's like, where did I originally find it? He's like, I found it. It was here on the desk. And then he walks over to the desk. He's like, wait a minute. He's like, did I find it here or did I find it down there? And he turns and points to the cellar. It's just this great little throwback to, both films being different, the first film and this film, how they weren't allowed to use the footage, so they had to refilm it. Oh, I love this scene where they find the book and that in the castle. He's got like this lit torch and he's like, looking around, but like the scene's like incredibly bright already. And he just like holds this torch down that he's found the book. But, it's like there's a hole in the roof and sunlight's coming through anyway. So I always love this voiceover. The voiceover's on the tape by Dr. Noby. It's just so fucking ominous. And the sound design in this is great too. Just then when like Ash opened the book, it's just like old leather opening the book. Here we go. And the classic Sam Raimi devised scene of the evil. How do we actually film the evil, like making its way to the cabin? We just mount the camera on a bit of board and get two people on either end and just run through the woods, and that's how we get those shots. And that's Linda. Jeez, Bruce is young in this, isn't he? At least he got his hair done between sequels, and the great scene of the drop in the bottle. That's it, call out to her, mate. You'll find her. Now, this kind of looks like a set, but I imagine maybe it is an exterior. No, it's probably a set by the look of it. Or it might be an exterior. Oh, there's Linda. Apparently, with the filming of the film, because the guys shot Evil Dead and then they went on to their first studio picture, Crime Wave, which was like racked with studio interference, classic studio interference. The film they were just completely like at odds with the studio the entire way of filming. And I think Sam Raimi pretty much disowned the movie when it came out almost. And when it came time to do Evil Dead 2, because they went back to Evil Dead because they kind of had to like earn their stripes again in Hollywood because with the success of the first Evil Dead. So they're like, we're going to go back and we're going to do this movie. Okay. Dino De Laurentiis came in to fund the picture because Stephen King convinced him to, because he was a fan of the original and he wanted to see a sequel. So, going back to the studio interference, Dino De Laurentiis offered like his studio space, like, come to my studios, it's at my offices, and we can film it here, and we'll be like right next door. And they were like, after Crime Wave, we just want to get away from that, all the problems we have with the studio, we want to get as far away as we can. So they went up North Carolina and they filmed all their exterior scenes out in the woods. I think it was like Woodsboro or something like that, I think it was called. Let me just take a second here because this scene is fantastic. It's one of my favorites, actually. I like how Ash crashes in this puddle and then this burst up and he's just like a deadite, or he's possessed like by a deadite. Here we go. Because when I first watched this movie, I was like, "Wow, I did not expect that!" Like him to come bursting out, and he's got like the deformed, like exaggerated dead-eyed face and the white eyes and everything. Anyway, back to the production. So they went. I think it was Woodsboro. I think it was called. Anyway, and they went to the local junior high school and they built the interior of the cabin in the school, or probably in the gymnasium or something like that. And that's where they filmed all the interiors because they decided they wanted to keep it in the cabin, keep the costs down. because Sam Raimi originally wanted to lean on more of the medieval stuff and that as well, but they just didn't have the budget for it. And all the exterior stuff was just shot in the woods in like the surrounding area. So that's how they got away from that studio interference. And I imagine the movie is all the better for it and that as well. And all the smoke's gone and everything's back to normal. And Ash is just like laying in a puddle. And he's got his legs hanging in there and he's going to catch cold. And he just sleeps the entire day. After what he's been through, like, I don't blame the bastard. He's been up all night. His friends and that have tried to murder him, depending on which film you want to go by. But the thing is, they're like, people like, you know, what's the definitive cut of this? You know, what's the timeline and that? And Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi and everybody pretty much just says, like, when Ash leaves the cabin in the morning and the evil rushes through the cabin at him and he goes flying through the woods, well, that happens at the end of The Evil Dead. And you could just take off that recap section at the beginning of Evil Dead 2 and just butter those two up and the movie. Just continue the first movie from that point where Ash goes flying through the woods. And there you go. There's your continuity there. Great shot of the cabin there. And the Delta, the Oldsmobile Delta, which is in every single one of Sam Raimi's films, and also Ash vs. Evil Dead. Linda's grave. And the crickets in the background. That is a big sun. I love this shot here coming up. For now. Where Ash decides to go for the car. He does the look at the car and then the head spins back the other way, beg your pardon. And then it just cuts to him in the car and the wheels spin up and he takes off. Which is great. And he's just realizing here that shit's still going down. No thanks. Join us. Get out of that puddle, Ash. Great design there in the cabin. Make it look like kind of a skull feature with the rocks and that at the bottom of the step. Here we go. Head whip. There we go. Gotta get out of there, Ash. Props to Bruce Campbell. How old is he in this movie? He's probably like 27, 28. Not terribly old. And carrying this movie pretty much the first half of the movie by himself. Oh no. This guy goes through the absolute ringer in this franchise. And you just can't get out of there now, Ash. And if you notice, the broken bridge, which is bent back, looks like a hand. Fingers and a thumb. Like clawing at you. You can't get away. Stop right now. So I guess I should go back and talk about where I actually first saw this movie. I talked about The Evil Dead, previous on our video games, not video games, movies that rocked our childhoods. Maybe we'll do a video games that rocked our childhoods episode soon. But I talked about Evil Dead, and when I first saw that, and my mate Mark, who's been on the podcast previous, who was on their 35th anniversary retrospective episode, him and I have known each other since we were kids, and he was the one who actually got me into like cult flicks, underground stuff, horror films, you know, low budget films, all this sort of stuff, B-grade movies, and I'm all the better for it. So I've told that story before. You can go back and listen to that episode. But the first time I ever saw Evil Dead 2, I was at our local, well, not our local, but our nearest city where we used to go do our grocery shopping and stuff. We were in like a big shopping complex, and I'm just a kid. I'm probably like 16, and I'm just wandering around, you know, waiting for your mum and dad to finish doing whatever they're doing so you can get going. And I walk around the other side of the complex. Great shot here. The camera just like gone through the car, by the way. I'm walking through the complex, and I walk around the back, and there's this guy got this table set up, and he's just selling like all this bric-a-brac, you know, and all this stuff he's just trying to get rid of. So I wander over there and I have a look, you know, and he's got like CDs and I don't know what else. I think he's selling like probably Yowies and shit in that too. Pat probably would have got a kick out of that if he was. But, you know, he was selling some videos as well. He had some videotapes. And I was going through these videotapes and I look, and he probably only had about 4 or 5 tapes there. But one of them was Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. And I pick it up and I'm like, whoa, it's the next one. Like, I've got the first one on VHS, still have the first one on VHS. And I was like, wow, I can get this movie. I can finally watch it. Like, I haven't seen it. Because, this is like this was like the very late 90s, I think. This was just like 99, 2000, I think. And I found this tape because, didn't really have DVDs and that. DVDs were just about to come out in the next year or two. So we were still heavy on VHS. So I find this VHS, it's like $16, and I've got the money, I buy it, and I get home, and I watch this movie, and it is just so funny, and it is so well done. And this is really like the first introduction of Ash losing his hand and the chainsaw going on the stump, which was just like the coolest idea in cinema ever, honestly. So I get home and I'm watching this movie and it's blowing my mind because the first one was just like so horrific, so grotesque, so violent. The pencil in the ankle scene, I'll never forget it. It'll haunt me forever. I get chills just when I think of it. Like, oh, fucking hell, I can never watch that scene. But this one was just like a step in like another direction. This was just like, let's take the horror and let's just inject some comedy in that to it and slapstick. And it's a little bit bigger in scope in that as well. We've got some of these exterior scenes, we've got planes and cars and more characters and, a little bit more having to go into the script as well. So it was a movie I absolutely loved. And I think I saw Army of Darkness. I'm not sure when I first saw Army of Darkness. I think that's a story for another day. I'll have to think on that. And then he is coming up to one of my favourite scenes in the cabin where Ash is he losing his mind, or is there actually stuff going on in this cabin which is really fucked up? Because you do not play tapes of recorded incantations from Books of the Dead. Now, it's actually cool to note in this movie as well that during production, Bruce Campbell was going to the gym. So he was hitting up the gym during production of this movie. So you'll notice from the beginning of the movie, he's a little bit leaner in that, but as the movie goes, he gradually bulks up. And then by the end of the movie, he's got some muscle. He's got muscle definition in that. When he's got to be like the big hero scenes with the tattered shirt and the torn jeans and the chainsaw hand and... Oh, let's just enjoy this for a bit, shall we? Just listen to that sound design. Just so... Gotta hand it to Sam Raimi in his films. Sound design is always fantastic. There's that scene in the first Evil Dead where there's a shot where the camera's like pointing directly down, like from the ceiling of the cabin, and it's like dollying from like right to left. The love theme here again, guys. It's dollying from like right to left or left to right, I think, but it's going over like the banisters, like in the ceiling. Like, so as it goes over the top, there's like a sound effect as it passes over the banisters and stuff, which is great. Just little touches like that just like really add to like sound design, because who would even think to do something like that, like a whooshing past sound as you pass over something. The love theme again. Ash remembers Linda and he had to murder her because she was possessed. And here we go, one of the great stop motion scenes from this film. Linda's dance. You'll notice that's a miniature there of the cabin. For the money they had, this stop motion scene's actually quite good. Throwback to the great Ray Harryhausen. And the head rolls off. Fantastic. And the twirl and the head stays in place. And she disappears off behind the tree. Ah, look out. Some of this comedy element, because you look at those hands and they're just like, you know they're fake. But just like this semi sort of slapstick scene, just like smashing his head in. It's just, oh, it's funny. And Ash coming to his senses. He's just like, he's back in the chair. Was that real or was I dreaming? And he just can't even scream. Poor guy's losing his mind. One of my favourite parts here is actually the deer's head. The laughing scene. Oh, there it is. Ah, head in the lap. Here we go. Ow. Just bashing the head with a book. You'll actually notice that Bruce Campbell has his thumb in the mouth of the head. He's holding it as he's doing his thing. He's trying to smash the head off his hand. Work shared. Now that re-recorded line there, because the audio wasn't as good as you'd expect in a very physical scene like that when he said the line, so they had to, do some ADR and dub it back in. But it just seemed a little disproportionate to the film, which is actually quite funny, and it works in the film's favour as well. And apparently on the set of Escape from LA, when Bruce Campbell and Kurt Russell first met, the first thing that Kurt Russell said to Bruce Campbell was, say work shed. The great finger point there, you're going down. And the chainsaw's gone, and here we go. Boom, through the door. Oh, God. And the chainsaw back in the head and the amount of blood. I just love it how in these horror movies and that, especially like these Evil Dead franchises, when someone gets cut or the gratuitous amount of blood that gets sprayed in people's faces, in their mouths, all over them gets caked. None more so than probably later on where Ash cuts his hand off, or in the Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead sequel, remake, reimagining from 5 or 6 years ago. The classic Saw hasn't changed in any of the films, I don't think, or the TV show. They've still kept it quite the same. Oh, the guy's fucking tormented. Look at him. How would you feel? Like your girlfriend is possessed. You had to kill her. You buried her. She's come back and she's possessed by evil. Just using her body as just a meatbag transport, and you've got to kill her again. And here's the blood going everywhere. And I love this. Bam, on the light. That is one of the better scenes. And the swinging and the shadows. Fantastic. Sam Raimi's really got the eye for this, for horror. They felt like they didn't know quite how to make a horror film. But, for not knowing how to do it, they did a fucking great job. I can tell you that much. And we're back in the cabin. Just a shot there, the shade, the light just on Bruce's eyes, sort of just getting his emotional state, and just all that conveyed through the eyes in that one scene. Just a quick sigh of relief from that he has now. He's back in the cabin, he's away from that, just that split second. Good idea, Bruce. Shotgun and a chainsaw. Don't ditch the chainsaw, that'll come in handy. Use both. Remington shells, load them up. Again with the sound design. One thing I always liked about Ash, I like how his hair's like always wet and that, like making it look like he's been sweating the whole time. But I always loved just the cuts, like the cut design on his face. Like he's got a cut on the cheek and he's got one on the chin and, you know, one at the top of his head. You know, he's just got blood coming from all these different areas. And I just always liked the look of that. He never just had like one cut and there was just like blood all down like one side of his face or something like that. It was in numerous places and blood everywhere. Check out that chair, Bruce. See, poor guy's fucking losing it. Is this really happening to him? Is it all just a nightmare? Or is the guy just losing his mind? And the mirror scene. You actually notice there's a hole in the wall. There's no mirror there. You've got two different actors. And Bruce shoots through. Nice composite shot there for 1986, I think. Honestly, yeah, I think this is my favourite part of the film. Like, all these different segments of Ash just like, is this really happening or am I going insane? Am I losing my mind? And it's just the evil just fucking with him. Getting in his head. And now the possessed hand. And some of the best slapstick you'll probably ever see in a horror movie coming up. He's done a fantastic job of this because you watch it and it all goes hand in hand because it's all Bruce Campbell doing this, acting with the hand lunging at him lunging back at the same time, and the great sound design, again, over the top of the evil hand. You know, like, it's all just mashes together perfectly to create a fantastic scene, a believable scene. Like, you really believe that hand's coming at him. Like, Bruce Campbell sells it really fucking well. It's a funny thing about these audio commentaries, you just can't stop to watch the movie because if you're not watching it, this isn't going to be very fun to listen to. It sure is the road to the Nobi cabin. Because there ain't no bridge no more. Kind of looks like a hand there again. I remember that they created that, or they recreated that very well in the very first Evil Dead video game, Hail to the King, on PS1, which is where I got the first film, because it came in like a 2-pack. You got the PS1 game, but also came with the VHS of the movie, and I'm just like, maybe they just knew, maybe THQ knew they had a terrible game, and they're like, let's just bundle this with the movie, because people will want the movie as well as getting the game. And I actually wanted it. I think I wanted it for my birthday, but I couldn't buy it. I had the money to buy it, but I couldn't because I was underage, because I was only like 14 or whatever. So I had to get my mum to come, and I had to convince her. I'm like, Mum, I want this game and that. Like, can you like take this money and get it for me? Because I'm not allowed to, because I'm not old enough. And she was like, how about I just get it for you for your birthday? And I was like, thanks, Mum. And it was like an R18 plus movie, which is like the hardest rating, the hardest base rating we have here in Australia. And I was like, props to my mum and dad for letting me have this R18 rated horror movie in, when I was, technically not of age, to watch it. But that was one of the great things about horror movies and all these films and that where, you shouldn't really be watching them. It's kind of like a rite of passage kind of thing to like watch these movies you're not allowed to watch. And Bruce does the greatest flip here. Oh. Here we go. Bam. Then this scene's in here, all the slapstick and that, because Sam Raimi is such a fan of the Three Stooges. And apparently Rob Tappert and Bruce Campbell, they tried to rein in Sam and Scott Spiegel, who was the co-writer on this film, as much as they could because they were injecting what they thought were too much, or was too much comedy into this movie, and it was getting away from the horror aspect. So they were worried it was going to be like this freak film. Like, it's meant to be a horror. It's not meant to be a comedy. Like, we know horror movies sell because we did so well with the first film, which was made for like, however many hundreds of thousands of dollars and made $13 million worldwide. So they were worried about that. But, you got to watch this final film, which is a great blend of horror and comedy. But, did Rob and Bruce actually stop them from going further with the comedy? And was it going to be more of a comedy with horror elements? But now it's just the perfect balance. Yeah, who's laughing now, motherfucker? And one of the coolest scenes in the movie. Starts it with his teeth. Who's laughing now? And like I said, blood all over the face. It just sprays everywhere. And just how the camera just twists and starts to turn almost upside down as it's happening. These wood shots are particularly eerie. Thank God for fog machines, eh? Bobby Joe in one of the most memorable scenes in the movie later on. And here comes Annie with her shorts and her very long socks and just carrying the pages of the book. That is a big ass trunk. Why the fuck would you need so much stuff? Again, comedy. That looks like a miniature. Again, great sound design. And a funny little moment here. A farewell to arms. Duct tape it on there, Ash. Now, it's actually pretty cool. I actually have the NECA Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn Ash figure. This Ash with the stump and the shotgun over the arm. I've actually got it up here on the beard cage shelf, which is pretty cool. It's a great figure. Comes with a few other accessories too. Axe, the demon hand. It's got the Necronomicon, and I think it's got the tape player as well, the reel-to-reel tape player. But yeah, it's a great figure. It's actually really painted well. The sculpt's great, and you can do the boomstick over the arm, which always looks fantastic. Where's it going? Where's it going, Ash? Get him. There he goes. Get him. He's going for the mouse hole. Boom. Great bit of stop motion there. Fantastic shot. Pretty much that FPS shot. Boom. Scene here, which always gets a great laugh. Boom, in the mousetrap. You tell him, Ash. And the finger. You son of a bitch. I love the dialogue from the hand, because the hand does get like a bit of dialogue in that as well if you actually listen to it. He's like, oh, you son of a bitch. Real great representation shot there of Ash cueing in to the sound of the hand. And here we come back to that blood element. Oh, man. Wow, God. It's like a geyser of blood. Now, I wonder what kind of shot that was. That probably would have had to have been maybe one of the later shots. Okay, we're going to put holes in the wall. And we're going to cover everything in blood. Is there no other franchise or role which Bruce is more famous for than Ash? There definitely isn't. And he knows it too. Oh, there goes that chair. Here it is. I love this so much. And the actual laugh, the laugh track that they've done for it. I always just love the head twist. Like, it's there and it's just like, eh. This is that twist before the laugh. And that shot. That classic shot. Ash looking right down the barrel laughing. I love the dip here. In line with the lamp. Dip, up, dip, up, dip. That ropey deer head, just the way it twists and it turns, and it's just so messed up. You're not on your own anymore, Ash. It's funny in Ash vs. Evil Dead 2, like, you know, the Evil Dead franchise, you know the significance of the cabin, so in pretty much every season, like the end of the first season, the end of the second season, they always end up going back to the cabin, you know, for whatever reason. And they get into it, and it is just almost, it's exact. Like, it's been recreated so faithfully from the films into this TV series. And it's just always a thrill, just like, to be back in that cabin. These Cabin in the Woods movies, eh? Sam Raimi's camera work is actually really fantastic. It's a shame where he went on to like studio pictures and stuff like Spider-Man, and he had to like really tone down his signature style to make it more sort of, you know, appeasing for mainstream audiences and that, and, you know, make it as appealing as possible for a bigger audience, you know, or as big as the audience as possible. But he did get to sort of throw in his real signature style in Spider-Man 2, in the operating room scene where the doctors are trying to remove Dr. Octopus's tentacles. And just everything, like the whip pans and everything, and the snap zooms, and the guy where he noticed the chainsaw tool, like the quick zoom on it, and he grabs it, and just the hand like up in the end, and and then he's like trying to cut the tentacles and stuff. It's fantastic. Everyone's seen Spider-Man 2, but jump on YouTube and go back and rewatch that scene like after you watch this movie, because it's classic Sam Raimi to a T. That's right, Annie, you act. You just always feel bad for this group of people. They've turned up to the cabin, and that obviously this is where her father was working, but now they've turned up, they just don't know the shitstorm that they've walked into. And they got no idea what's going on. And don't put him in the cellar. Don't put him in the cellar. Boom. Oh. Now, was that actually Bruce that did that, or was that like a stunt guy that did the falling down? Because he pretty much lands like on, his lower neck, his back of his head. It looked like a fucking hurt. Like the staircase scene in Fight Club, where he gets thrown down like the subway stairs. I know David Fincher is like a big dude for like multiple takes and coverage and stuff and that, but he made this stuntman throw himself down these 2 flights of stairs like 5 or 6 times, and they just end up using the first take anyway. Filmmaking. Here we got some of that great voiceover again by Nobi. Sure is, Annie. To a Kandarian demon. Bit of product placement there for Panasonic. And he locks her in the cellar. Henrietta's actually back in Ash vs. Evil Dead, which is great. Even the transformation scene in that as well, like to the big demon head with the massive long neck. They've done so much in that movie. Like, they can pretty much do and get away with like whatever they want. Because some of the stuff there is like, it's like real gross. It's like real over the top. But it is fantastic. Like last week's episode, season 3, episode 2 of season 3, so fantastic. There's a scene where Ash is fighting a deadite in a sperm bank, and just take that knowledge and just imagine what happens. If you haven't watched Ash vs. Evil Dead, I strongly suggest you get on it, because, I mean, this is a show we got to support. It's what we wanted. It's more Evil Dead. I know it's different, like we got new characters and that, and we're in a half-hour like comedy horror format, but yeah, it is fantastic. Like, I really love the show. There's issues in that now that it may end up being cancelled. It hasn't been renewed for a 4th season. Season 3 debut, it didn't debut at Halloween last year. It was pushed back a couple of months, and it's only just debuted. It went up against The Walking Dead, so it's having ratings issues and that because of, it's going up against The Walking Dead, which, is losing ratings and stuff on its own, but, it still has to compete. That show still brings in a lot of viewers. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's just literally like a puppet on a stick. And, oh no, it's chewing on his foot. Fuck. A lot of these effects were done by, K&B effects. Before they were K&B effects, obviously, talking about The Walking Dead, they do pretty much all the zombie effects in that. What are they? Howard Berger and Greg Nicotero are K&B effects. And here's that scene we were talking about. Oh, the eyeball scene. Bloop. Classic. Yeah, so support Ash vs. Evil Dead. Like, if you haven't seen it, go out and buy the DVDs, go out and buy the Blu-rays, and watch it, because, yeah, I binge-watched the 2nd season. I started it, I think, twice last year, but I just never finished it because I was always watching something else. But I'm like, no, I've got to watch this show because I love this franchise. It's about time that I finally get around to it. And yeah, I binge-watched season 2, had an absolute blast, loved the hell out of it. Season 3's just started, and it's a hoot, it's a riot. Like, these episodes haven't been better. So support the show, definitely give it a go. Go out and watch it. I'm in Australia, I know it's on Stan. Just go out and buy the DVDs or Blu-rays and that. Support the show, because we need more. Because if it goes, then what are the chances of us getting any more Evil Dead again? I mean, Ash, Bruce Campbell is getting a lot older and that now, and, guy's not going to be around forever, and he's not going to be, able to keep up all the physical stuff and that forever, so we got to take what we can get. And the show is fantastic. It really is. Oh God, Bobby Joe just comes in with that scream. Look at Bruce there. Jeez, he's a good looking guy. Slow turn here. The cellar door, the chained cellar door. Used again in the Evil Dead remake, sequel, reboot, whatever you want to call it. Don't do it, Annie. It's not your mum. The big no. The big swinging the head back and forth. No. Definitely must be hot there. We can see some flies there in this scene. One on the cellar door and one just at the bottom of the screen. We just missed it. Yeah, I think this was filmed in the summertime. Here's a jump scare. Hey! Great shot here. Now it's composite, obviously. Now, I don't think that one is. There's a wire there. You could see that. Dead by Dawn. Henrietta, played by Sam Raimi's brother, Ted Raimi. Hair scene's fantastic. Swallowing the hair. And Ted Raimi comes back to play Henrietta again in Ash vs. Evil Dead. He also plays another character, as himself. But he plays another character. What was this? Chad? Chad, I think his name was. Drop the F-bomb there, you fucking coward. Jeff, these fucking demons. Here we go, he's got the axe. I've got this in my toy. Whoa! Now green blood. Now that's a different choice. It's still very visually cool. It's very different too. From the red and a bit of the orange. And now we're getting the green. And running down the camera. Fantastic. And now where's all that blood gone? Wasn't it just all over the deer's head? Continuity! Now, if you look at Bruce here, he does actually look a little bit bigger. Just a little bit. Don't you just love old school films and that where somebody gets a hand or something cut off and like, how are we going to do that? Just make a fist, we'll make the shirt arm a bit longer and we'll just wrap it up at the end so it looks like you're missing a hand. That's how you used to do it. The woods have swallowed it up. And you're trapped. Very simple technique there. Just the pendulum just stops mid-swing. Yeah, it is. And it is doing this audio commentary as well, because I'm just sitting here watching the movie. I wonder in that shot there if Sam was just behind camera, he's like, okay, I'm going to call out directions to look. Or did they just have them memorize the directions and they were just like, down, up, bottom right, left, down, up right. Another one of the great things of low budget filmmaking, you don't have the money to show stuff. This goes back to like Jaws. Jaws was pretty much like one of the first films this was kind of like named for. Like we don't have the money, or there's problems with the film, so we have to be creative with the way we show stuff, or we don't show stuff. Like Jaws, for example. We'll go back to Jaws. The shark kept stuffing up They built it for fresh water and they tested it and it worked fine. Once they got out in salt water, the salt water kept like eating through like all the machinery and stuff, and that the shark wouldn't work. So they kept working on it and they had to film these scenes with the shark. So like, how are we going to show the shark? Let's just do the shark's point of view. So we'll just do like first person. Okay, a shark doesn't work today. How are we going to do it? Let's show it with the floating barrels. So the shark's there, but you don't actually see it. Same with this, like, we don't have the money to, like, show the evil or the evil presence all the time. So how do we do it? We'll just use sound. We'll use sound design. We'll use camera work to show that there is stuff there, but we're just not seeing it. And, like, everybody knows this. It builds, you know. It's always scarier. What you don't see is always scarier. You know, you paint that picture in your mind of what you think things will be or what you think they'll look like. If you just see something like straight away in broad daylight, you're like, ah, and then like the scare factor's gone because you've seen it and you've seen it in broad daylight, you know what it looks like. So if it keeps showing up like that, you know, that scare factor's gone because you know what you're dealing with. It's always more terrifying if you don't show as less as possible. And like I said, that goes back to the low-budget filmmaking. You don't have the money to be able to do this, so you have to be more creative with your filmmaking. So you're like, how can we show stuff without it actually being there? Let's just do sound. Let's use the camera and a combination of the sound to show that there is stuff around, but they're looking, you know, it's outside so much. That's the thing about the Evil Dead, like the evil... the presence, the entity, it is there, you know, it's there in the woods, but it just like possesses people, it possesses the trees, it possesses like all the different things in the cabin, but the entity is like, itself, it's inherently invisible, you know? So, whoop, another whiphead look. Here's another composite. Dr. Nobi. Mm-hmm. In the book. It's always in the book. No matter what the book causes, it can be undone. I always found this line creepy. Save my soul. God, have your own minds. I always found that line creepy. Save my soul. But I ain't holding your hand. Oh shit. Look down. God damn. Now, did I mention the video game thing before? I was talking about the bridge, like the hand, like the bridge looks like a hand, and they recreated that in the video game. Went off tangent, just talking about actually buying the first video. Yeah, they recreated that in the game, even though that game was terrible. Like, I played that game from start to finish. It was an awful game. It was probably one of the worst games on PS1. But, you know, I played it and I got through it and, you know, I loved it. Back then, you didn't really know any better either, you know? You just got a game and you played it. Sometimes you'd get a game and you're like, oh, this isn't very good. Like, there were many instances in my childhood where, like, my parents would buy me a video game for Christmas or something like that, and it wasn't any good. Generally, they were pretty good. Like, we'll say probably 80% of the time, 85% of the time, I always got a great game that I always played, like, the hell out of. But there were a few times, you know, 2, 3, 4 games which they got, and they were just like, you know, it was like bottom of the barrel stuff, you know, it was like pretty rubbish. Pretty rubbish games. It's like driving games and stuff, and always with the possessed trees in the Evil Dead franchise. We got another tree in Ash vs. Evil Dead in that as well. They even make a joke about Linda in the first film. The joke's something like, like I said before, like in this show, like on Stars, they pretty much do whatever they want and they can get away with it. Like showing like pretty graphic like horror stuff and gross stuff and there was one joke they made the other day about the infamous tree rape scene from the first film. And I don't know, it was just like Ash just made like this passing joke about like before she I don't know, she got fucked by a tree or something like that. She went 2 rounds and fucked by a tree or something like that. And I was just like, whoa, really? You're gonna like go back to that? Like, okay, like sure. I honestly can't remember how the joke went, but yeah, it was kind of along those lines. But I was just like, they've done a lot in that show, but when that joke came up, I was just like, whoa, really? But yeah, that's the kind of show that Ash vs. Evil Dead is. Cold shiver down your spine, Ash. Someone did just walk over your grave. Foreshadowing. The hero from the sky. Do you know he looks like you, Ash? He's got a blue shirt and a chainsaw hand. Didn't do a very good job. They come back to that a lot in Ash vs. Evil Dead as well. I really love the production design here. Like, just the Necronomicon itself. There have been so many Necronomicons in these movies and the show and that, but I really do like the book from this film, Evil Dead 2. The page design and that, like the images and the Sumerian writing and everything in that in the pages, I think it was the best looking so far. That there just looks like it was done with a pen, that lettering. Granted, it does look great in Ash vs. Evil Dead. Like, they have got those production values and that for those pages, but, the front of the book, the face of the book, the face on the front of the book, it does vary from film to film. Evil Dead looks great. In this looks great. Ash vs. Evil Dead, it's less like raised and stuff, like an actual like face, like lips and nose and stuff. It's more like stretched and flattened out, which is fine. The Necronomicon looks great in the Evil Dead remake, sequel, reboot, whatever in that as well. I love the scene where they find it, but it's like wrapped in like black garbage bags and it's like wrapped in barbed wire as well. So like they have to cut this barbed wire and just like bend it open before it can get to the book. And the front of the book is literally like pieces of flesh that are just like stitched together. No face or anything on that on it. That would be a bit too much for today's audiences, I think. They'd be like, that's a bit stupid, don't you think, having a face? Because if someone was to look at that, they'd be like, this is probably not a book that I should read from. It has like a fleshy face on the front. Whereas different pieces of flesh that are all stitched together for a cover, okay, that's still pretty dark and spooky and scary, but, we can still run with it a bit. And it's easier for audiences to chew on. Modern audiences, anyway. The score by Joseph LaDuca, I nearly say Doluca, but it's actually LaDuca, is just like so much bigger in this film. I know he did the score for the first film. Obviously, they didn't have a lot of money in that, so he just had to work with what he was given. They did have a lot more money for this one, though. The score just sounds like bigger and grander, and it has like, just more meat in that to it, like really fits in like the themes of the scenes and that and stuff. And particularly like the love theme in that earlier, like that's a great one. Like Linda and Ash's theme, the love theme, that, like I said, the piano, as it just gets bigger as it plays, the dun 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 dun, But yeah, the score just sounds so much bigger and grandiose in this movie than it did compared to the previous. Bobby Joe! Look out, here it comes. The 2x4 with the camera on it. Run, fellas, run! It's a pretty ingenious idea in that, though, because, we can go up and over stuff. Someone can, like, go low and went, and the other person can go high, and it can just, like, they're really, like, floating and flying through the air and that. Just ingenious, low-budget filmmaking, you know? It just really plays on your expectations and shit and that. Like, just then the evil was, like, coming right at him, but then all of a sudden it just stops and everything's quiet. And you're just like, whoa, I thought that was something's gonna happen here. There was a nice little Within the Woods throwback there with Ash raising him up in the air. Within the Woods was actually a short film that Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell and everyone that made originally, where, you know, Bruce and his girlfriend go into the woods, and I can't really remember it. Anyway, he ends up getting possessed, but in the short film, like, he lifts her up, like, above his head. There's that great, it's probably the most famous shot from the actual short film that everyone's seen, where he's holding her above his head, and that was a nice little throwback there. Kandarian dagger, which is actually massive. That is a huge dagger made out of, like, a freaking spine. And again, I keep harping on it, but the sound design, like, in the quiet moments, like now, you always get, like, the wind and that blowing in the background, like the... You know, there's always something, like, going on in the background. And on this quiet moment, I'm just going to wet my lips with a bit of water. This is fun. I'm having a good time. Be easier if someone else was here, though. You know, we could bounce around a bit, probably get a little bit more going. But, you know, this is fun. This really isn't going to be too much fun if you're just listening to this in the car. You really need to be watching the movie while you're listening to this. And here again, the music just building until boom. Big rubber Kandarian dagger in the stomach. Jump scare. Just the way he's lit. Fantastic. Oh no, poor guy. Look out, he's coming around to the back door. Pull him in. Get your feet in the door, mate. Quick, Annie, he's coming. That door doesn't look like it would hold much anyway. She actually looks like she's having a really good time there. She's just like, let's scream, it's fun. Ah! Ah! I think it would be grueling making, like, a low-budget horror film, but I think at the same time it would be immensely fun in that as well. Especially doing it with, like, all your friends, all your best mates and everything in that. It would be so much fun. But yeah, grueling and daunting and exhausting all at the same time. See that rubber dagger? Oh... You know, they actually teach in first aid courses, like, if someone's stabbed with something, don't pull it out, because you'll do more damage pulling it out than leaving it in. Because, you know, when somebody gets stabbed, I've done first aid courses, mate, like, when someone gets stabbed, like, the object that is in them is actually slowing, or clotting the blood flow, so, like, there's not as much or no blood, like, getting out. But as soon as you pull it out, you pretty much open the floodgates and you're like, well, now I've done it. So if you can get a chance to, like, get someone to the hospital, like, pretty quickly, just leave it in. Don't pull it out. Because you'll do more damage. And you'll be a hell of a lot worse off. Grab that axe. Oh no, Henrietta! That's one thing I hate in movies. I get real funny about fingernails. Like, there's a scene in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake where I think it's... I don't know, it might be Scott, the guy's name. I don't remember what his name is. Anyway, Leatherface cuts his leg off, like, when he's running through the washing, and he picks him up and he's, like, got him on his shoulder, and he goes to carry him, like, down to the cellar, like, down to the basement, and he's going down the stairs, and he's clawing at the wall, and then there's just, like, this close-up scene where he claws the wall and his fingernail gets torn off, and I can't watch that scene, like the ankle stabbing scene in the first Evil Dead. I can't watch it because it's too much for me. Like, I can watch all the blood and gore and people getting their heads cut off and stabbed and all these sorts of things, but as soon as it comes to, like, somebody getting, like, a pencil in, like, a sensitive area, like an ankle and it's been twisted around, or a fingernail being ripped off, nah, that's it, I'm done. You know? Packing my bag and I'm going home. That's the end of me. See you later. And you notice how they had the chain set up like a skull there? We can't rewind it because that'll fuck the commentary. But, yeah, they had the chain looking like a skull. And now Ash remembering the love of his life, Linda. The piece of jewellery that he gave up. The piece of jewellery that Sam Raimi wanted with the magnifying glass on the end they would use to, you know, destroy the evil. But, like I said, they scrapped that idea. That's it, Ash. Remember, get your humanity back. Ash is like such a tragic figure in these first two movies, but once he gets to Army of Darkness, he really becomes more of that, the selfish kind of buffoon, and they really carried that over to Ash vs. Evil Dead as well. Which is fine, like, I love that Ash, but I really like this tragic and tormented Ash and that as well. I think that's just as interesting as the buffoonish, jokish Ash as well. You know, the selfish guy is really kind of... He's out for himself, but then at the end of the day, like, he becomes the hero everyone needs, and... Yeah. But I really like in this how he's such... And the first film, how he's such a tragic and, like, tortured figure. Because that's always more interesting. And here we're leading up to one of the most memorable scenes in the film, and probably the actual coolest scene in the film. The work shed. And carve ourselves up a witch. And here's Sam's classic camera work here, which he incorporated again into Spider-Man 2, which we were talking about. And really all this is just that sound design as well. And the most bitchin' scene in a horror movie ever. Here we go. Rom. And the hero theme here. By Joseph LaDuca. And the greatest line to ever come out of a horror movie, ever. Groovy. And that's even Bruce Campbell's Twitter username, @GroovyBruce. And another tree in the Evil Dead. That's a miniature there. Miniature cabin by the look of it. How handy would it be having a chainsaw hand? I remember, I think the first introduction I ever had to Army of Darkness, like a lot of these movies, was an full-page advertisement in the comic I had. And I opened this page, and in the comic there was this full-page spread of that classic Army of Darkness poster, where Ash is standing up all triumphant. He's got, like, no shirt, really. It's, like, little tattered bits. And he's got, like, the most ripped Adonis, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, chest and six-pack you've ever seen. And you've got the castle and stuff in the background. And it's just got, like, that great tagline. It's, like, trapped in time, surrounded by evil, low on gas. and it was just the most bitchingly cool poster like I'd ever seen. I'm like, what is this? This guy has a chainsaw for a hand. That is the coolest thing ever. Freddy's glove back there, by the way. I'm just, yeah, like, what horror movie or, like, horror comedy, horror franchise has come up with such, like, legendary and iconic lines and props and characters? I mean, there's a lot. You got Freddy Krueger, you got Halloween, you got, the shape with the kitchen knife and the mask. You've got all these horror icons, but you've just got Bruce Campbell as Ash. You've got the chainsaw hand, you've got the look, you've got the cuts all over the face, you've got the sawn off shotgun, you've got the catchphrases, groovy, give me some sugar, baby, hail to the king, baby. You've got all these great lines. Yo, she bitch, let's go. It's fantastic. Where would we be without the Evil Dead franchise? Really? Again, there's that sound design. Look at that. Chainsaw blade, like, right in the foreground, like, right in the camera's face. I wonder if that was a real chainsaw. Perhaps it was. They just dulled, like, all the blade and that on it. I know for a fact in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Toby Hooper, Gunnar Hansen, the chainsaw he used was actually a real chainsaw, but they just took the blade off it. They took the chain off it. And for, like, a lot of their scenes where he's running, and they've taken the chain and the blades and that off it. So he's literally running with a real chainsaw. It just doesn't have the blades on it. But as for some of those close-ups and that, I'm not really sure. Perhaps he used a real one. They just dulled the blades. Who knows? It would still do damage, though. It would still fuck you up. I have talked about it a little bit, but the Evil Dead remake, sequel, reboot, requel, whatever you want to call it, I do have a lot of love for that movie, and I absolutely love the opening scene in the cellar. I think it's probably one of the best actual Evil Dead cellar scenes, where the daughter's tied up and she's like, "Daddy, I just want to go home. Take me home." And then, the whole, "I'll swallow your soul. I will rip your soul out, Daddy." That scene, I love that scene so much. It's fantastic. A little bit more slapsticky there. Get up, Ash. Gonna have to find out if they actually did that geyser scene later on. Well, obviously they didn't, because they've got the holes in the walls. Maybe they just set those up and they did it later on. I'm not actually sure if they filmed this in order. Perhaps they did. Like I said, Bruce Campbell did get progressively fitter and put on more muscle as the film went on. As filming went on, you'll notice here he's got a nice bit of bloody muscle on that, some nice definition. He's looking pretty ripped. Let's go. So I'm just wondering if they filmed it in order or not. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. Let's see if we can find that out. I'm sure one of these Blu-rays and that, one of the numerous releases of Evil Dead 2 will have an audio commentary on it. I'll be able to find out. This is like a Balboa scene here. Hulkamania, get up. Not bad stop motion scene there. Not bad at all. With what they had to work with. There actually is the one at the very end of the film where Ash is back in time is probably the worst stop motion shot in the movie. It's actually like in daylight too. It's like meant to be like in broad daylight, and it's just, it doesn't look as good. Composite there, stop motion composite with real footage. Just that head design is just fantastic. The teeth, look at the teeth. It's so grotesque. And the pieces just go flying just across the screen, left to right. Oh, dear. I swear to your soul, I swear to your soul, I swear to your soul. Swallow this, motherfucker. Boom. Jesus, Ash, that would have been real deadly because your face, oh, not your face, your foot was awfully close to their face. You would have just filled your feet full of buckshot, blown your toes off. The folks in this movie get put through the absolute ringer. None more so than Ash. It sucks, Annie. Your mum just got killed. She was dead, and she was possessed by evil, and she just turned into a big snake-headed motherfucker, and I just cut her head off, and it was messed up. Don't ever come back to this cabin. Miniature there. Now, coming up here is probably, well, definitely the most ambitious part of the film. And I take my hat off to Sam Raimi for actually going with it with like the budget they had, but such a big, well, probably part animatronic, part puppet in that as well. This tree coming through the front door. And the massive tree limb, like, hand that, like, hangs onto Ash. It's a very King Kong moment, you know. But, holy crap, like, ambitious as fuck. Things are picking up here. Got these little snap zooms, these close-up snap zooms out, in and out, in and out. Do it, Annie. Read the pages. Where's the tree? I jumped the gun there a bit. Here we go. Here he is. That's just like, holy fuck. And his hair just whitens. Get rid of it. Oh no, Annie. I feel real bad for Annie here. She's stabbed in the back by the goddamn possessed hand. But, you know, she still finishes it. Oh, Ash. No! Fuck. You just keep losing all these women in your life, Ash. This cabin's just like taking everything for you. Here we go. Here's the ambition. Look at this massive King Kong looking effect here. Very Fay Ray here. Well, Ash is doing his best Fay Ray, I guess. Bruce Campbell. Look at this giant head. You can actually see, it looked like some straps on it just by the door frame. And it looks like, which was like pulling like the head like around from side to side and stuff. The one time you got a chainsaw and there's like a big wooden tree there, how fitting? How fitting is that, really? What do you mainly use the chainsaw for? Cutting wood. Look out. Oh, Annie. All the heads. This. Victory is ours! It's like this chainsaw was made for that eye slit there. Oh, look at that. Get him. And there goes the Oldsmobile. Very ambitious. Gigantic tree head and a tree hand. You sure did. Oh no. There goes the stove. Man, Bruce really got put through the ringer in this movie, hey? Alright, we're just gonna have like all these wind machines blowing, we're gonna have like papers and books and shit in that flight are hitting you in the face. I do love this line here. How do you stop it? Oh, no. Shot there of Bruce on a wire, flying through the air. Oh, fuck. He's just like, what could possibly happen now? Getting a little 2001 here. Great music choice. I always did like this shot. Just the silence and the Oldsmobile just dropping in midair. Now, one thing about this medieval ending, this medieval setting, I always liked how it was very, like, desaturated. I always liked the look. It was very... This looks like it was filmed in just, like, a quarry, actually. But, yeah, I always really liked the desaturated look. Whereas when they went to Army of Darkness and, you know, became, like, a studio picture, it just looked like another fantasy movie, you know? The voice overlay, and here's that stop motion shot we were just talking about before, which is really pushing it there. But you know, it's passable. It's just borderline passable. And Ash just stands up and does his fucking thing. Boom. Again, the sound design. It's like the greatest thing about this movie. The sound design is absolutely fantastic. Just the head exploding, you just like all the juicy sounds and the blood and it's excellent. Sam Raimi there. And then a throwback to earlier in the film. You got the castle in the background. Was it the Kandarian castle, the Sumerian castle? I can't remember the actual castle, but... And then Ash is fucked because he's been sent back to medieval times. And now what are you going to do? Setting up for a possible sequel there, which we did eventually get in Army of Darkness in, what was it, 93? 93 Army of Darkness came out the same year as Jurassic Park, would you believe it? Well, that's Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. God, I do love that movie. It is my favourite Evil Dead film. But yeah, I will say about Ash vs. Evil Dead, if you definitely haven't seen it, go out and watch it. Support the show while you can, because it is fantastic. Go out and buy the DVDs and the Blu-rays and whatever. Buy the merchandise, like... That really goes a long way. I like merchandise selling and that. It definitely goes a long way for these films and TV shows and that lasting, you know? It really says a lot to these studios, apparently. Merchandise is selling through the roof. All these Ash vs. Evil Dead toys and stuff. It is fantastic. Definitely watch it. I love this film. I love the first one. I love Army of Darkness. I fucking love the remake, reboot, sequel, requel, reimagining, whatever you want to call it. This has been fun. I hope you guys enjoy this. Just took the day off, the week off from the regular scheduled programming and decided to do this. We have talked about doing audio commentaries down the track. It's just at the moment, just it's really hard, getting everyone together in the same room at the moment. So, but later on, I think when we do audio commentaries, we won't post them here, in our regular places, SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. We'll maybe post them somewhere else. We'll find somewhere else to put them separate from the show. This was just a bit of a one-off this week, and yeah, tell me what you thought of the this audio commentary. Like I said, it's definitely better that you watch the film while you listen to this. I really hope that you watched it while you listened to this and you didn't listen to it in the car, because it wouldn't be as much fun. But anyway, I hope you dug it, and yeah, definitely tell me what you thought. Bob should be back next week. He was been working on this project and that again, which has taken up a lot of time. So yeah, I thought I'd take the reins and do something a little bit different and have some fun. So yeah, tell me what you like, tell me what you didn't like, And yeah, my name's Jags. I'm the Beard Master. If you want to find us, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/BeardGeeksPod. You can listen to the show on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. If you want to buy a t-shirt, you can jump on TeePublic. You can find us on Instagram at The Bearded Geeks and on Twitter at BeardedGeeksPod. So, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next week on The Bearded Geeks. Hey!